Something to know about me? I love any game customization elements, whether it be for your character in an MMO, or it be crafting your dream weapon. And one mod that gives me that limitless customization is Tinker's Construct. This being very known for creating and making tools, weapons and armor, it takes the creativity of modifying these in-game accessories by allowing you to add lots of different abilities and effects, like enchantments within the base game. Tinker's has been one of my favourite mods since the good old days of Race to the Moon series. It all began when I laid my eyes on the magnificent Smeltomatron 5000 that Squid had made for the blue team. Sorry. And suffice to say, the beloved Tinkers we once knew has gone under various huge changes. And with these changes in mind, I'm going to go through them all and try to explain as best as I can to all newcomers of this mod. So with that said, let's begin. Covering the basics, you'll get a book on Spawn called Materials and You. If you get rid of this book or misplace it, don't stress, it's an easy recipe to understand. Craft the book, craft a template, which is the bread and butter for the early game. Combine the two in either your inventory crafting grid or a crafting table and done. This is when you get to start tinkering around. You however need to make a few interactable blocks first. Said blocks are the part builder and the tinker station. Then the block you can make is the crafting station. I'd recommend this one as when you're usually crafting and gotta leave, your stuff just gets dropped or put back into your inventory. The crafting station however will keep everything in place even when you leave it. And when placed adjacent to a chest, you can also access it when in the crafting menu as well. And the crafting station is also useful for any bulk farm you have. For example, an iron farm, if you're needing to craft iron ingots into block form, you can do it there because the chest GUI will be on the left hand side of your crafting GUI, and you can just bam 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 back and forth back and forth back and forth. Real simple, real easy, really fluid. But once you've gotten this sorted, you can start getting some tier 1 materials together to start crafting parts and forging weapons and tools. If you want to hear about all the materials and tiers within Tinkers, be sure to check out this video where I briefly explain them all. Now if you've watched that video, you'll know that there's a total of 4 tiers, and some of the materials require exploring, alloying, farming, etc. Don't worry, I'll get to all these later on. But once you've started with the bare bones of this mod, you'll then need to gather sand, gravel and clay, preferably clay blocks, and then craft all that into something called grouts. I say clay blocks as you can use the block recipe variation in a shapeless crafting grid. Once crafted, take a piece of grout, combine with a book to craft your next book within the many books you'll be crafting within Tinkers. That's a lot of books. There is a total of 6. This one's called puny smelting. Now you want to take that grout and put it into a furnace and let it cook into seared bricks. These act like Minecraft vanilla bricks where you have to get 4 to craft into the block variant, which are called seared bricks. But hold on, before crafting them all into block form, you'll need to use the ingot form to craft something called a melter. And to craft this, you need 9 seared bricks, 4 to either craft a seared ingot or fuel gauge, and the other 5 to actually craft the melter. Here's how to craft it, and if you thought that was it, you are sorely mistaken, because after that you need to craft a heater in order to actually activate your melter. Don't fret, as this recipe is quite simple, you just need 8 bricks. And to craft the heater, it follows the same recipe as either a furnace or a chest. Now once that's done, you can start to melt down ores and other materials to begin making tier 2 parts for tools and weapons. But before continuing, you will also need to craft a casting table and basin and a few faucets. I just put the recipes on the screen here so you don't have to hear me say it, but the reason for making these bits for your melter setup is so that you can actually pour out the materials from your melter. And to do that, you simply right click the faucets. Congratulations, you've now made your first multi-block smelter within Tinkers. This however is the baby one. There's 4 others, but I'll get to those later on. Next, you want to craft another book. Put that into your casting table, and then you want to melt some seared bricks and then pour that onto the book. This now brings us to tier 3 with the book Mighty Smelting. The first book covers tier 1, second covers tier 2, and the third covers tier 3. You know, as obvious as it seems, I just wanted to clarify that with you all. But here's a quick thing I learned from an old friend. First, you want to smelt some clay into the melter. Now, if you take either gravel or any other stone variant block and place them into the basin, you then want to pour the molten clay onto either of these blocks, and bish bosh bash, Bob's your uncle. Okay, well not really, the blocks turn to seared stone blocks. This actually makes the process for making the next multi-block smelter much easier. Remember when I mentioned the Smeltomatron 5000 from the Race to the Moon series with Squid at the start, right? That's what this is. To get started with your brand new smeltery, you're gonna need to melt down some copper and pour that onto whatever seared stone variation of your choosing to get your smeltery controller. Now, the smeltery is the melter but better tenfold. It is just a huge industrial furnace. Brief rundown, works pretty much the same as the melter. Smeltables go in here, fuel in here, similar, but the only difference with the smeltery is that with every so many smeltables you put in, you're able to get extra from it and some. Allow me to explain. God, I love saying that. Okay, for example, you have a copious amount of raw iron ore. You put all of what you can fit into the smeltery, let it cook, and let's say for this example, you've put 1 in. You'll get not only 1 ingot worth of iron, but also 3 nuggets as well. So doing some math, yep, for every 3 raw iron, you get 3 ingots plus 1 extra. Pretty cool, right? And this works with all base game ores, copper, gold, and also ancient debris. However, if you were to use Silk Touch to get the ore block, the blocks being copper, iron, gold, emerald, quartz, and diamond, and melt these down, you get twice the amount instead of melting the raw ore. You could also use Fortune to help get more, but like, this is Tinker stuff, so doing it in the smeltery does the cool thing of getting extra. Just, it's cool math. Cool math. But I hope that all made a little bit of sense. However, with the smeltery, you're gonna need drains to, well, drain at your smeltery. And poking out of the drains, you'll need to place faucets like with the melter. Now, here's a quick tip. Instead of going around trying to right click precisely on all your faucets every time you want to drain, place a lever above the faucets, turn them on, and now you have fully automated your draining process. You, however, cannot automate the dispensing process. Not with the mod by itself, but that's for another day. And to properly fuel your smeltery, you're going to need a plentiful lava source, as the more you build it and melt, the more fuel it's going to need. The melter is early game and the smelter is mid game. Is there anything for late game? Why, yes there is. But before we start with that, we need to venture forth to the Netherrealm for some soul sand or soil, your choice, and some magma cream. And grab as much as you can, just so you're not having to make constant trips to hell and back, literally. And similar to grout, you'll be using these resources plus some gravel to make nether grout. It's a shaper's recipe, so don't worry. Now with this, chuck it into a furnace, cook it up, and you'll get scorched bricks. This is where the fun begins. With scorched bricks, you make scorched stone, and with scorched stone, you make scorched stone brick blocks. A little more tedious than the seared brick blocks, but there is an easier way to do it. Similar to the trick with pouring molten clay onto gravel or any stone variant block, you can do the same with scorched stone. Simply melt down some magma cream and pour it onto gravel or basalt. Now before going ahead, you want to grab yourself a spare piece of nether grout, craft another book, combine the two together, and now you have yourself a helpful, fantastic foundry guidebook to continue onwards with your foundry and alloyer. And with the copious amounts of scorched bricks blocks you should have, you can go craft and build a foundry and alloyer. The foundry is the last and final upgrade per se for the multi-block smelters within Tinkers. The benefits to having this mega industrial furnace is that 1, you won't have to worry about accidentally alloying ores like you can do in the smeltery. 2, it can give you byproduct. For example, when melting ancient debris, you get 1 ancient scrap, 1 diamond, and 1 gold ingot. And 3, it's just bigger and better than the smeltery. I need to get this built in Tinker's 200 days hardcore, like yesterday, like now. To make the foundry, you'll need to take a scorched brick block, melt some obsidian down in your smeltery, then pour the molten obsidian onto the scorched brick block to create the foundry controller. And similar to the setup to the smeltery, only thing is you're gonna need to fill in the corners. If you don't, the foundry won't function. A little annoying, but it's just how it works. Sorry, I lied. Well, kind of. There is one last multi-block smelter, and this is called the alloyer. And to make this, you need 5 scorched bricks and either 1 scorched fuel gauge or ingot gauge. And as far as setups go for the alloyer, you're recreating the same setup as your melter. Only difference, you don't really need to have bases and tables. You can if you want, but it's not needed, and you may be asking why. Well, with blocks of air surrounding the alloyer, you will want to put down some ingot gauges adjacent to the alloyer. The alloyer allows up to 4 materials to be alloyed together, so you can place 2 on the left and right hand sides, 1 at the back and 1 at the top. But if you're feeling chaotic, you can put 1 in the front of the alloyer. But hey, I'm not judging. You're just a little crazy if you do so. The reason for the use of ingot gauges is because these blocks are able to transfer molten liquid stored within and are able to be broken down to transport. And don't worry, you won't lose any of your molten liquid inside once broken. You can, however, of course, place down pipeline channels to have it be easier for transportation as well as automation. These are just some of the things you can do if you're a little creative and think outside the box. Alright, I've told you most of the meat and potatoes with materials and the smelter setups. Now it's time to actually talk about tinkering and weapon making. This is by far the most enjoyable part of the mod, as the tinkering aspect allows for limitless customization, like I said at the start of the video. Now, the first thing you want to make is a Tinker's Anvil. This anvil is very specific as it'll help you make both tier 1 and 2 weapons, tools and armor. The Tinker Station is the very early game version of the anvil, and you'll actually need this to make the anvil. So break down your Tinker Station, gather 4 seared stone blocks, and finally create 3 blocks of Tinker's base metals. The one I recommend you to make is amethyst bronze, as I found it is the easiest one to alloy within the smeltery. And to make this, you'll need 1 amethyst shard and 1 raw copper. This however makes 1 ingot worth of the alloyed metal. So doing some math, it's a 1-to-1 ratio for materials to the ingot, so you'll need 27 of each resource. Once melted down, alloyed and poured into a basin, let it cool, gather your 3 blocks, and finally craft your anvil. Alloying is something I'll talk about soon. Congrats, you can now start tinkering and making some crazy weapons, tools and armor. Yippee! There are however a few more interactable blocks you want to make though before continuing heavily into the mod. The first being the modified work table. Essentially, this work table allows for precise and in-depth modifications to all your Tinker gizmos and gadgets. There is a book to help you out with making this process easier so that you don't have to hear me yap too much. But the book you'll need is Tinker's Gadgetry, but I'll touch base on that later. The last 2 blocks you want to make are very similar. They're both chests. However, one carries all your patterns, the other your casts. One is called the pattern chest and the other a cast chest. Kinda obvious from what they store. Anyway, here's some screenshots of the recipes so you don't have to hear me and my annoying voice explain what's needed. You know, it's rare that I find something new during a recording video such as this, and this something I found out was that this block here, the Tinker's chest, can actually store anything and everything it seems. Gonna be completely honest, I completely forgot about this block, and it's actually really easy to craft. So just thought I'd share this with you. I'm a little bit stupid, I must admit. Now let's go back to tinkering with weapons and tools and such. The first lot of tools you will be shown to make with the Tinker Station are a sword, daggers, a kammer, a pickaxe, an axe, a mattock, a pickaxe, a crossbow, and armor. There is another slot which essentially allows for you to repair, swap parts, or apply effects like if you were to enchant your tools and such. Just to clarify, Tinker's base tools and armor cannot be enchanted. I'll explain what each tool does in a bit, don't worry. Now, within the anvil, we're introduced to a new tier of tools called broad tools. Basically, these tools allow for, well, broader areas of interaction. They give the player a 3x3 area of usability, but there are a couple that hold unique features which I'll get to soon. Also, apologies if I'm saying that too much, there's just so much to talk about, so please bear with me. Okay, the broad tools that were given are a cleaver, an excavator, a vein hammer, my personal favorite, a sledgehammer, a broadaxe, a scythe, and a longbow. Now, I'll quickly explain the new tools from tier 1. The daggers are 2-handed short swords essentially, and you can alternate between the two. You sadly cannot throw them. I was in fact saddened by this also. The kammer works like a hoe, except when crops are fully grown, you can right click and array plants for you. You can also shear sheep, which is really cool. The pickaxe is simply a pickaxe and shovel combined, and the mattock is another tool combo of an axe and shovel in one. Now to briefly explain the broad tools. Like I said, these things interact with anything that's within a 3x3 area of its effect. The cleaver is essentially a great sword, but as the name suggests, you have a higher chance at severing a mob's head. Very useful for wither skeleton head farming. The excavator is just a big shovel, again, digging a 3x3 area. The vein hammer. Now I mentioned this as my favorite. 2 reasons. The first being just the way it looks, I personally love its design. The second is that any vein blocks you mine, it'll mine just those blocks. It doesn't rely on the 3x3, so it's able to mine other blocks within a much larger radius. The sledgehammer, essentially a pickaxe, again, also just digging a 3x3 area. The broadaxe, essentially an axe, but has a built-in tree capitator. Do you guys remember that mod? Anyway, the scythe is like the kammer, but bigger and better, however, it cannot shear sheep. And lastly is the longbow, which is just a really big bow. Not much to it than that, to be honest. So, not only can you make customizable tools and weapons within Tinkers, but you can also make custom armor and shields. I'll get to the shields in a moment. Now to make the armor, I found it best to make a temporary pattern with sand, cast some low tier metal into it like copper or iron. That'll destroy the sand cast, but you'll have the armor piece remain. After that, cast gold onto it. This way you'll have a permanent cast to constantly cast armor pieces. The armor piece you have placed down, however, will be destroyed in the process afterwards. Big sag. There is actually one more thing you'll need to know before you can actually start tinkering with armor. You'll need to make something called a mail. which according to some research is like a prerequisite of chainmail. Can't exactly remember off the top of my head, but essentially Tinker's armor isn't like regular armor, it's called plate armor. So the mail acts as the chainmail bits you see in suits of armor within medieval films and shows, and the actual armor pieces that you would have casted from your chosen resources is the actual armor part. Again, follow the same procedure to make the permanent cast with the mail as you did with the armor casting. And finally is the shield. To make a shield, simply take a pattern of any defensive base material. These materials are located separately in each book. Combine the pattern and your desired resource in the part builder to make your shield core, and next is the fun part. To make it a little more customized for your taste, use whatever molten metal resource you'd like and cast it onto the shield core and placed in the casting table. Now look at you! You've got some sweet drip to go with your magnificent industrial foundry smelteries. And hey, by the way, you know what else is magnificent? If you're enjoying this video, and if it's helping you by any means, it would be really appreciated if you could just take 5 seconds to like and subscribe. Thank you again for support. Now back to the video. Now before we continue on to the last bit of the video, if you want to be able to have a one-stop place to look at all the Tinker's materials and tools and such, craft a book, place it on a casting table and pour some molten gold over it. This will turn it into what is essentially the Tinker's Bible. This is called the Encyclopedia of Tinkering. I still recommend using the other books when possible, as some of the other books do contain more information about certain things. But now that that's been sorted, now we can get started on gadgets. Yeah, remember when I mentioned the book Tinker's Gadgetry? For that book, you'll need to get some sky slime. Now you may be wondering where that could be. You see those ominous floating islands? Those are called slime islands, and the ones that are blue are the sky slime islands. There are many variants, but I'll get to that soon. Now, climb up to the island, kill some of the slime, make sure not to fall off and plummet to an unfortunate demise, and gather some sky slime. Craft another book, and with another shapeless recipe, combine the sky slime and the book together, and with that, you now have made all 6 books within Tinker's construct. Congratulations. Now within this book, you'll see lots of different oddities, most notably modifiers, slimy armor, and gadgets. I'll get to what these are in a minute, but first I just wanted to tell you all a little bit about slime. Slime in Tinker's doesn't do the same thing it does in vanilla. Well, no, sorry, it does. And some. Slime is actually a crucial part to the core of Tinker, as the properties that slime is capable of are actually quite cool and unique. For example, you can use the variants of slime to make parts for tools as well as give them upgrades and abilities. Most notably, Overslime, which essentially adds a secondary health bar to all your tools over time, as well as regenerate their health back after use. There's a hell of a lot more slime can be used for within Tinkers, but I won't bore you with all the details. However, there is one weird thing you can do, and that's make cake with it. These cakes give you some pretty wild debuffs though. Not sure how slime cake would taste though. I feel it would be like jelly or jello. Anyway, within the gadgetry side of things, Tinkers also offers a wide variety of gizmos that are pretty fun to use. To name a few, we have the Eflin, E-F-L-N, all in caps by the way, which is just a throwable bomb. Perfect for nether blasting to mine ancient debris. We have a piggy backpack, which allows you to pick up mobs and carry them as if to give them a piggyback. And we also have shurikens, which are cool as hell ninja stars. I would assume quite lethal though. Now before I mention the slime islands, these are kind of cool because you don't need to actually venture forth to a swamp and wait for night or go digging to slime chunks. You can simply wait around for slimes to spawn and kill them. But we don't sit around and wait here on this channel. I see myself as a technical Minecrafter, and after playing around, I found a way to efficiently farm slimes at an incredibly fast rate. Simply build another portal based farm on your island of choosing. Make sure to spawn proof the tops of the portal frames. This is just so nothing spawns on top, decreasing your farm rates. And afterwards, build a platform high enough to when you can see slime spawning at a stupidly high rate, AFK for a bit, and BAM! Automated AFK slime farm within Tinkers. No swamps, no slime chunks. Personally, one of my favorite discoveries for this mod, and I personally haven't seen anyone else do this, so I hope this helps. And these farms work for all variants as far as I'm aware. Speaking of variants, there are 4 variants within the world of Tinkers: Earth, Sky, End, and Ichor. Earth and Sky reside in the overworld, Ichor in the Nether, and End, well, in the end. And it's now just dawned on me that the portal-based farm will not work with End or Ichor slimes because they changed how Ichor slimes work, as well as Ends because you can't place nether portals in the end. I'm a little stupid, I will admit. But also you'll notice each island has trees and such. These trees can be harvested and you can get saplings from these to make a slimy tree farm. And not only can you get slime based wood, you can also get the slime ball variant from these trees as well. Nothing compared to the farm that I spoke about before, but certainly nothing to scoff at, especially if you're not really needing copious amounts. But if you're feeling overwhelmed with how much slime you've got, you can compact it down into 2 block forms. You can of course make slime blocks with each variant, but you can also make something called congealed slime. This is just purely for vanity purposes as you bounce off of it from all directions. It's really fun to do it once in a while because you can just kind of make your own bouncy castle with these blocks. You won't take any fall damage or anything unless you're really high up, then maybe, but maybe don't do that just in case. Another thing I wanted to mention is that you will find and discover geodes similar to amethyst geodes but filled with clusters of slime crystals. These crystals have a wide variety of uses. You can however cook up the slime ball variants to make slime crystals if you can't find your specific geode in your world. Also, earlier I touched base with making something called slimy armor. The armor is kind of split up into 4 different types. You got boots, shell, elytra, and skull. The boots are just like regular boots but give you a bit more of a spring to your step. Get it? Because the armor is slime and slimes bounce. Yeah, okay, that was dumb. The shell are your leggings, except you gain 18 extra inventory slots, basically combining 2/3 of a shulker box to your pants. Wait, the shell gives you pockets. These are just like actual pants. Holy sh! The elytra is a chest plate armor piece combined with the elytra, and the skull is actually a combination of 14 different types. I say this as the skull headpiece combines a helmet with a mob's head, and with 14 different mobs you're given 14 different uniquely made helmet pieces, at least from the current version Tinkers actually supports. Oh, by the way, all the stuff I covered regarding tools and armor and such, yeah, that's not all. Don't worry, there isn't much left. This is the last lot of tool information. In recent updates, not exactly sure when it was, Tinkers added a new tool called staffs. Now, they don't work in normal fashion like you think, you know, casting spells and whatnot. Yeah, no magic sadly. They are, however, very customizable. There are 4 variants, and each type does something different from the other. We have the Earth Slime Staff, Sky Slime, Ichor, and End Slime Staff. Staffs lack the ability to be used as melee tools, but are much better with defense. The Earth Slime is accurate and has high defense. The Sky Slime Staff is fast and upgradable. The Ichor Staff is efficient with velocity while also having lots of ability slots. And lastly, the End Staff has high power and longer reach. And when it comes to tinkering with these tools, you're not able to use the Tinker's Anvil like you normally would. You will need to use the modifier work table in order to customize the staffs. And with the addition of staffs also comes crystals. It does honestly feel like you're becoming a wizard, just minus the magic. But with these crystals, you're able to transfer enchantments from books onto crystals and apply them onto your staff of choice. You'll have to do a little bit of research as the enchantments that you transfer will be either under upgrades or abilities. Now, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this yet, but the difference between abilities and upgrades are quite drastic. Most upgrades act like vanilla enchants, and some, whereas abilities actually make your tools and weapons interactable, giving it a unique ability to do something. You know, it's kind of obvious now as I said it out loud. You get the point there, right? Now going back to modifiers, this is another thing on top of all the abilities and upgrades that I've just covered. Modifiers, like I said, can only be done at the modifier work table, and what they essentially do is make it so you can modify and edit previous abilities and upgrades. For example, there's an extract modifier for abilities, upgrades, and even modifiers, each using a slime crystal and an ingot or gem, which can be stored away for later use. This is just one of the many unique modifiers that can be applied to your tools and weapons. Again, not going to bore you all and explain every little detail, but if you watched up to this point and you have enjoyed this brief guide and you've got the mod for yourself, now is the time for you yourselves to play around. Go get creative and make some cool combinations and just go ham. So way back in the early days of like 1.7 to 1.12, 2 completely different versions, I know, but whenever the first edition of Tinkers came out and I saw it in action, I think the first person I watched to do guides on it was Broomycraft. Sadly, Broomy has deleted all his content and I couldn't find any of those videos, but the early days of Tinkers had so much cool stuff. Like, I remember an item called Moss, which I think is now what Slime has replaced it with, and also the Foundry and Alloy are new to me, as well as the Melter. All that is new and I had no clue what was going on. And now that we're into, I think, the 3rd edition of Tinkers, after having done some research, there's not really much information to really go on. I've tried countless wiki pages, but they all say the same thing, or at least knowledge I've already had previously, so I've kinda had to do some of this stuff blind and learn it myself, which there's nothing wrong with that, just seems a little frustrating sometimes when you can't really figure out something. And there's not really any clues to help you out on the internet. That's the whole reason why I made this video. This was made to be somewhat of a brief guide to hopefully help all of you that are stepping foot into this mod, whether you're new or old, and that's ultimately the goal of most of my videos, to help and teach you all, but not in the typical tutorial fashion, as I feel those videos are kind of no longer part of the norm like they used to be. So I hope you've all learned something from this video and I hope you all enjoyed. I'll actually be in Japan in a couple of weeks from having uploaded this, but I'll be hard at work on the 200 days for Tinkers. Until then, Happy New Year, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!